White Rocket Entertainment podcast number 919. And this is the White Rocket podcast. We're going to get right to it with Andor, the Last Word. I am joined by my AU Wishbone co-host, John Ringer. Welcome aboard, John.
Thanks, Van. Glad to be here.
You have just recently completed watching all of Andor. I had been checking in on you. Some would say bugging you. Some would say harassing you for weeks and weeks about it. But you finished it, and so we get to talk about it now. So that's why I'm calling this the last word. We're kind of coming here at the end and saying, here are our final thoughts on this show. So before we get into the specifics, you sat down, you watched the whole thing. How did it hit you?
I think it's great television. That's how, I think it's incredibly well made. I think it's really smartly put together. The acting's great. The writing's excellent. And I think I love it as a Star Wars story also because it's different than other Star Wars stories.
Yeah, for sure. So let's go back then. When season 1 began a couple of years ago, and I talked about this a little bit in my solo podcast, but just for those that didn't hear it and just to kind of catch you up on it too. When it first started a couple of years ago, I barely remembered anything about Rogue One. It was a movie I didn't love. I realize now, and we'll talk about this, but I realize now I like Rogue One a lot better now because I care about the characters. When Rogue One first came out, I didn't know who anybody was, and I didn't care. The only characters in it that I was interested in were the ones I already knew when they make their little cameos, right? So watching Rogue One again this time, actually caring about all the characters that were Rogue One characters, Andor characters, it was a much better movie. What was your thoughts about that?
Oh yeah, we definitely did the watch the last episode, immediately watch Rogue One thing. And I agree. Actually, in some ways, Andor's so good. There's some stuff in the movie that bugged me now.
Yes.
Watching it after watching Andor. But it definitely made that movie better because it set it up. And it tells kind of the complete arc story. How did the rebellion begin? And how did they get to that place at the moment at the beginning of Star Wars?
Yeah, I think that you're right. Andor is so well done that it actually exposes some of the flaws, not only in Rogue One, but also in Star Wars itself. And by that, for some of you, I mean A New Hope, but I don't call it that. I will never call it that. But in Star Wars,
it's Star Wars.
My favorite meme about that is the characters in Andor suffer so greatly so that a couple of truck drivers and a farm boy can get medals at the end of Star Wars.
Yeah, there should be some CGI of some of those Rogue One people in the background being like, what the heck?
Dude, what's up? What's up with this? Right. Yeah. So I know. I mean, at the very least, the ones that are still alive, like Clea, deserve medals. My gosh. Not all of them make it to the end, or make it to the beginning of Star Wars, but some of them presumably do, so. Yeah, so I agree. And I think part of it too is that Rogue One was several creators and not just Tony Gilroy, whereas Andor, Gilroy got to have his singular vision.
Agreed. Yeah. Big.
Yeah. And so it really does. The more it goes on, the more it makes you care. And I think I love the idea that in the Star Wars movies, we saw the heroic upper crust of the rebellion, but here we see that to create something like that, you got to get down and you got to have people willing to get down and dirty. And I mean, Luthen and Cassian and Clea, and I don't remember her name, but the Indian lady that was the friend of Mon Mothma's sister, they were all like willing to get their hands more than dirty. And I found that interesting for a Star Wars story.
Oh, it is a much darker tone than other Star Wars movies. Because like the good guys are not because there's bad stuff in like The Empire Strikes Back, they're torturing people and stuff, right? But in this movie, the good guys are torturing people. The good guys are doing assassinating people.
That's right.
The good guys are robbing people and doing terrible things. And so I think all of those things make it a darker movie.
Well, that's a good segue then to my other question, which is this what we want Star Wars to be? And that was something that was debated, I think, more during the first season than the second season for reasons that we'll get to that I think are going to become obvious. But when I was first watching the first season of Andor, and it's a very slow burn, right? The first several episodes, especially with the flashbacks when he was a little kid, I was like, I don't care. I don't care. But then when he kills the two policemen, and then I thought when it really kicks off is when he goes to the beach planet and gets arrested for nothing. And then you're just like, because we could all kind of sympathize with being harassed by cops for not doing anything, especially when it's the Empire.
Well, I mean, you asked, is this what we want Star Wars to be? I think one of the essential things that makes Andor great is there are no freaking Jedi.
Yes.
None. There's no Jedi. There's no Jedi coming through that door to save you.
Mm-hmm.
If the good guys are going to do it, it's got to be, like you said, like low level on the ground people doing stuff. So I think that's important.
Well, what that does too, you're exactly right. What that does too is it elevates the threat level of even the lowliest of the Imperials. Mm-hmm. Because in Star Wars, you're never scared when even a stormtrooper, much less like a uniformed security Imperial guy, we'll chop him into 15 pieces before he turns around. Stormtroopers are terrifying.
Yes.
In Andor. And it reminded me, just a quick aside, and I may have mentioned this in my solo too, but in Warhammer 40,000, if you read some of their books, it's at the Space Marines level, and they are like these supermen, these super powerful robotic cyborg beings, right? But if you read Dan Abnett's books about Gaunt's ghosts, they're down at the grunt level. They're just troopers, regular guys like you and me with a gun and a uniform. When they encounter one of those like Chaos Space Marines, it's like, the guy that killed, what's the creature that killed Superman, right? When Superman encounters him, there's a fight and it's pretty even. When a guy with a pistol encounters this guy, you know what I mean?
Yes.
Or Bane from Batman, or Solomon Grundy, or some Marvel villain, whatever. The Abomination,
Magneto, whatever.
Yeah, it's very different when you or me with a gun as opposed to Thor. You know what I'm saying? Yes. Encounters that person. And so it's the same thing here. When we see the stormtroopers in a Star Wars movie, you're like, oh, they're about to get killed. When you see a stormtrooper in Andor, you're like, oh my gosh, hide. Dude, look out, the stormtroopers. Oh my God. And the stormtroopers and the other Imperials do pretty vicious stuff.
Yes.
Throughout this story too.
They earn their reputation as the bad guys. So
yeah. And the Imperial leaders too, which we'll get to. So all right. So where I was going with this where we want Star Wars to be is I think that by partway through season 1, you start thinking maybe this is okay. But what was your thought originally on that? Like, did you rebel a little bit and say, oh, I don't, at the very beginning, did you say, oh, I don't know if this is what I want Star Wars to be? I don't want it to go down this path, or were you kind of on board the whole way?
I was on board because it was well made. Again, I think there's a lot of stuff in the Star Wars universe that has Jedis and all this stuff in it that is not well made recently, right? So I think I'm comparing it to everything that's been made in the last 15 years or whatever. It's the best. So in that sense, yes, this is what I want Star Wars to be. I want it to be that level of quality. Now, the tone of the show is, I don't think that every Star Wars product should be that tone. I think there should be some more hopeful things. Star Wars ultimately is a story about hope and overcoming odds and stuff. But but it is incredibly well done. And we'll get into it. I think to me, one of the big things that comes through in Andor in both seasons is, when we, in the Star Wars movies, we jump right into the Empire is bad, we're fighting them. Okay. But Andor goes to, at a regular human level on regular planets, what does Imperial oppression look like? What are the Imperials doing? What is the Empire doing to regular human beings? And why is that bad? So I think that's a big kind of arc of and one of the things that makes the show successful is how they do that.
Yeah, and I agree with you completely. And I was not as quick to get on board. I agree about the quality, but there were a couple of times that I was like, oh, I don't know if I want Star Wars to be this. A little bit in the first season with just some various things. And then in the second season with the rape, with the use of the word rape, I'm like, I don't know if I want Star Wars to have rape in it, even though obviously in that Star Wars galaxy there that would happen. But I don't know if I want that to be a story point. But again, like you said, I think over time, what brought me around was the realization that it's so good, it's so well done that I'm willing to accept a few things that are new and are oddly atonal to Star Wars if it means we're getting this, that we're getting all of this. And so I kind of said, okay, I can put up with A, B, and C if I'm getting all the other things.
Agreed.
So it was interesting how it was structured. The 3-episode mini arcs, each was like a Star Wars movie. I thought that was kind of cool because what we were lucky enough to get over the course of 2 seasons was basically 8 new Star Wars movies.
Yes.
Incredible.
Which was your favorite 3-episode mini arc?
Oh, that's a tough question because there were several. I mean, all right. So let's kind of look at a few of the good ones in order, and we can talk about that. So the one that really got things going, I thought, was the heist, where they disguised themselves and nobody trusted Cassian. He's a mercenary at that point. He's not a true believer. I love how Diego Luna plays that character. He's always he's like a little dog that's been beat too much, but is still fierce. And so he kind of looks like a hang dog. But when somebody confronts him, he's like, I'll kick your ass, And so he's a really compelling character. He's not always a likable character, but he's always a very compelling character, right? Whereas Mon Mothma on the other side is very likable, but not always compelling. They're kind of opposite sides of the same coin in that way. Because she vacillates a lot and is still figuring things out. So we'll get to the characters, but the heist I thought was really, really cool. And then that goes straight into the prison. And when he ends up in prison, I'm like, where are they going with this? But then they turned it into this awesome Prison Break movie, which was incredible.
Outstanding.
That's when I was 100% on board, was the Prison Break. When they got out of that, I'm like, oh.
The end of the Prison Break arc, we got to say this now. We're talking about Andor. There are going to be spoilers in this. There've already been spoilers. So,
it's been out for a while.
But at the end of the Prison Break arc, when he says, I don't know how to swim. And that was just such a moment. You were like, oh my gosh.
After all that. Yeah. The Prison Break. And I mean, and I think that was when he really came over to the rebel side, the thought that the Empire is so capricious that they could just throw him in prison. And I loved Gollum. Gollum was just like the greatest guest star in that arc. He was such a cool character in that.
Andy Serkis,
yeah. He's always been Gollum in my heart. So, there's a little bit more in season 1. And then the next really, good one, there's the TIE fighter heist, which was okay, except that what I liked about that segment was that we got to see that on Yavin. We didn't realize that was Yavin, right? At first, you don't realize that's Yavin. And when you realize that's Yavin, you're like, oh my gosh, the rebels are idiots.
Well, and then the rebels he meets in the jungles on the way back from the TIE fighter heist, it shows like the rebels are all splintered. They're in these little groups, and some of them are complete idiots. They are really,
absolutely. And I was starting during this time also to finally understand how the character of I don't have everybody written down, dang it. Forrest Whitaker, right? Played the what's his name? Axe something, whatever. But anyway, he's the rebel leader of his own faction. And in Rogue One, Saw Gerrera. I knew it was a something for cutting wood. Yeah, Saw Gerrera. in Rogue One, I had no interest in that character at all. I'm just like, what is Forrest Whitaker doing with this gonzo scenery chewing over the top guy?
Lies, deception.
so good. But in this, you understand kind of where he's coming from. Again, it's about giving depth and backstory and making you care.
But and again, I thought his character and his group was a great way during the show for them to show like it's a rebellion, but it's kind of a big tent rebellion, and
It is.
not everybody's in alignment with how militant we should be and how hardcore we should be. And he's over there on that side doing his thing, and he doesn't trust all the other rebellion leaders.
Yeah. You know, one thing that it all made me realize is thank goodness that the Mon Calamari showed up and kind of whipped everybody in line, because it's like before they showed up, they couldn't have beaten one Star Destroyer, much less the whole Empire. The Mon Calamari are the backbone of the rebellion, John.
At least in terms of the admiralty side of knowing what they're supposed to be doing, it for sure.
That's for sure. So, in fact, I should have brought it up a while ago, but I actually have that off famously. As the audio, but I'm not going to fool with it. All right. So, and then the last arc that I want to talk about is on, I want to say Trantor, because I've been watching Foundation. No, well, all right. You're right. There's two more. There's the Gore, which runs all the way through season 2, but you have the arc that's about the Gorman massacre. That's next level. That is absolutely next level. And then the last one is the whole everybody getting to Yavin, rescuing Clea from what's the capital called? Coruscant. I want to say Trantor. It's the same thing. Trantor and Coruscant are the same thing. Just a different empire. And so I mean, as much as the Gore arc was awesome, I kind of enjoyed that last one a lot. They're all so good, though. So what do you think?
I agree. All right. I work for the government, okay? I've been in a lot of meetings with a lot of people from different units. I loved the Imperial planning session on Gore, where they brought everybody together and they had the PR people be like, we can make the Gore unlikable, and everybody's like, okay, settle down. I thought that was so relatable to me that they're like, okay, we got to have a meeting. You can't tell anybody. This is what we're doing. This is everybody's job. You got to brainstorm about ideas and bring it back to the group. Like, that was so relatable to me, and I thought that was so well done.
And you know what it was supposed to be? It was the Wannsee conference. If you watch that Kenneth Branagh movie called Conspiracy, it's the same scene, just different topic, but it's the same exact thing. Like over coffee and bagels, they plan the genocide of a race. It's the exact same thing. And yeah, that was horrifying how they were like, well, first we have to make them unlikable and make everybody distrust them. And I thought it was fascinating later on when you see Cyril's mother and she's like, oh, those Gore, they're horrible. And you're like, oh, she's been watching blank news.
But it just shows like how smart this show was. Like, they had that, and then they showed you just like a 10-second glimpse of the TV reporters on Gore, and they're presenting stuff which is obviously not factually true, but they're reading from the script they've been given by the PR people to direct public opinion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. You can tell who watches Imperial Network News, and because they're buying the line. They're absolutely buying the propaganda. So it's just incredible. And I was going to mention too, there's so many visual cues. You could tell that so much deep thought went into it. I had just discovered this morning that if you take all the opening themes of Andor, everyone is different every episode. And if you play them all together, it plays one song. Each one it's like minimal, but it's different parts of one thing. And I guess like the Rebels coming together. And then this is a show that rewards multiple rewatching more than anything since maybe Babylon 5. It's like I've watched it like 3 times now, and every time I watch it, I get a whole deeper understanding of whole segments of the plot and the characters that I missed the first couple of times. Like, I mean, even as basic as like the first time through, I didn't really understand the whole wedding with Mon Mothma thing, and then I came to realize, okay, so the rebels are broke. They've been borrowing money. She's going to get in trouble because like of an audit. She's got to find a way to get money and get out of this scrutiny. So she's marrying her daughter off to this guy, and then her childhood friend is like blackmailing her, and Luthen takes care of that. You know, you don't even see it, by the way. That's so cool.
I love that they don't show that, but they 100% killed that guy.
Oh yeah, well, because his replacement driver was the Indian lady that we were talking about. That was like one of the rebel leaders. She was. Yes. You just see her getting in the car with him, and you're like, well, so much for him. I think his name was Ty or Tay or whatever. Yeah, so much for him. He's done. So, yeah, they didn't have to spell things out. You knew the characters well enough by that point.
Virata Sethu is that character's name.
Okay, yeah. And then
but
she
also
ends up getting killed later.
One of the things with these character arcs or the story arcs you talked about is they pick up people along the way at each arc who end up making it to the end.
Yeah, or not. But yeah,
right, or not. But that's how they do all these different things. But some of the characters go from place to place to place, and some of them come and go, kind of.
So let's look at some of those characters then. That was the other big thing I wanted to talk about. We've got to start with Cassian, and my question is, was he kind of doomed? Could he not make it through the story because of what he did with the security guys at the very beginning?
Maybe. I mean, I think he seems like a doomed character in the sense that he's kind of this spark for the rebellion. And he's put in all these dangerous circumstances again and again and again. So it seems like at some point his luck, he's not a Jedi. His luck is going to run out.
Number comes up. Yeah. I agree. In terms of like, is he living on borrowed time because he has to pay the price eventually? You know, there's been other characters and other stories like that too.
Agree. And I think there are times when he senses that he's like, I got to get out and I got to run and I got to go away. But then he keeps coming back and recommitting. And so I think that's where he becomes a, kind of a fated doomed character. Yeah. Is the recommitment.
Yeah. That he could get out, but he keeps coming back. And all right. And that brings Bix in. We can still talk about Cassian, but I want to bring Bix in too for a second because she, or as Cassian always says, Bix. He always says Bix. She's interesting. By the way, let me ask you: does Cassian ever find his sister? Whatever happened to that plot line? Did I miss something? Because at the very beginning, he's looking for his sister. That's why he ends up in that bar with the prostitutes and everything, and that's why he has a clash with those guards and kills them. And then it's like we never hear about his sister again, right?
I think she's dead. I think that's part of the story.
Did he find that out? Again, this is one of those things where if I watch it a fourth time, I'll probably get that. You know what I mean? There's just so many layers and levels and things that every time I see a video or something about the beginning of the show, it says, well, he starts out looking for a sister. I'm like, hey, they never mention that again. It's like it becomes less about her and more about Bix. Because remember at the beginning, Bix has a boyfriend who betrays them, but she ends up kind of over time with Cassian.
You got to start with the ending, okay?
Yeah. All right.
The scene of her being back on the grain harvest planet with the baby, there's like Cassian's baby, and he doesn't know, but also she went away and left him alone so that he could recommit to the rebellion because she knew that was important, that he needed to be there and the rebellion needed him. And if she stayed and she was pregnant, he knew he would never do any of that stuff at the end of season 2 of Andor or in Rogue One. He wouldn't do any of it. She had to go away. But also her and the baby is a little bit, I think, the sunrise that Luthen refers to that he'll never see, like the sun's coming up in that scene. I think that's very one of those themes you talk about. And then also I just think it's like hope and life continues despite all these terrible things that we've shown you in the show. So I think Bix was important. Again, she was there at the beginning on the planet, and she's tortured by the Empire terribly. But then she and Cassian go back and kill that guy. Like they go back and assassinate that Imperial doctor who was the torture expert. So I think, really important arc, but also, she gets sexually assaulted in season 2.
Mhm.
And I think between the torture and that, I think you talk about characters suffering in the show. There's a lot of suffering in the show. She probably suffers the most.
That's probably true. Yeah, you can see at the beginning of season 2 that she's really like haunted. She
Mhm.
can't sleep. She's having nightmares and everything, but she kind of deals with that apparently by taking that
Taking drugs.
yeah, but then by taking out that callous Imperial interrogator guy and giving him a taste of his own medicine, literally. All right, so we got to get to I think my favorite character. I mean, there's so many great characters, but I just love, you mentioned,
I'm condemned to use the tools of my enemy to defeat them. I burn my decency for someone else's future. I burn my life to make a sunrise that I know I'll never see.
that's so good. I mean, he has a couple of speeches like that.
The best speeches in the show. Luthen is a great character, and his, the actor does a great job with him. And I love the multiple faces of Luthen, kind of the public face and the private rebellion face, but also the fact that nobody else, like the beginning of the show, nobody else has any vision about rebellion except Luthen. And then I love at the end, we get kind of the Luthen Clea backstory episode, and you're like,
Yes.
I understand why. You see him as a person, and you're like, I get it.
The thing that was amazing about that is that for 1.8 seasons, he has been the master manipulator, telling everybody else what to do. And like, if you don't do exactly what I say, you're just insane and going to die. You have to do exactly what I say. And then with that backstory, you find out that Clea has way more agency over him than you realize. She, for a season and a half, she's just like his assistant. You don't realize how much power she has. And when you see her as that little girl, you realize she's telling him as much as he's telling her, if not more.
But also, like, she's more hardcore than he is.
Yes.
Like, a lot of his job is to hold her back from going, nuclear on the Empire.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing. And so let's bring her in too, because I want to talk about Luthen, but yeah, go ahead.
The intersection of the Clea Luthen at the end, the episode where she pulls him off the life support thing, where she basically destroys the hospital and goes in and pulls him off the life support thing, is incredible. Like with the arc of those two characters and the backstory we just got, seeing her do that was really powerful. And basically doing it to her father, because she knows that's what he would have wanted. And was important. It was very important to him. So that was very well done. And I really liked how she was so, depressed and upset after that. She was like, y'all go tell the rebellion. I don't, whatever.
Yeah. Once she was done, she was like, done. They're not going to like me anyway. Because she understood the rebellion now is going in a different direction, and they're not going to like people like me. They wouldn't have embraced Luthen, and they're not going to embrace me. And Cassian and the others are like, no, they appreciate you. And she's like, they don't appreciate you.
But also, like, she and Luthen were like these people that like held their hands out and like threw the rebellion up in the air, got it some altitude, and now the rebellion's flying, and they're like, who are you?
Yes, unbelievable. It's the power of understanding the characters. That's the whole thing. Like, I saw a video that made this really important point. They said, who do we have more compassion and sympathy and upset over? Alderaan getting blown up or Gore getting blown up, basically. And it's Gore because we knew them and we cared and we spent time with them. When Alderaan gets blown up, you're kind of like, oh, man, what an incredible weapon. Oh no, how terrible. Whereas here you're like, good Lord, they're Nazis. Oh my God.
Hey, Jimmy Smits was there.
Yeah, that's true. We did lose.
Or Benjamin Bratt.
Or Benjamin. Yeah. I thought Benjamin Bratt was fine. I didn't have a problem with that. In fact, he probably did a slightly better job than Jimmy would have done, to be honest. But anyway, Luthen and Clea, before we move on from them, just an incredible pair that evolved over the course of the story. Yeah. You learn their early days, their later. I do love that Stellan Skarsgård's so good as Luthen because he can play deeply scary. He's played enough villains that you know he can be a big, mean, scary guy, but he's also played goofy, like in the Marvel movies. He was the goofy scientist helping Thor. And so he's got such a range that he puts his little wig on and smiles, and he's the ingratiating aristocrat. And then he flips the switch and he's this deadly assassin mastermind. Yeah, it's incredible.
When he's talking to Mon Mothma and he says, she's like, what do you mean? What are you talking about? He's like, how nice for you.
Oh, yeah. That she doesn't understand that the sacrifice has to be made. And he says,
how nice for you.
Yeah, I have that one on audio too. Exactly. That's so good. Yeah, I love also, by the way, speaking of that there are certain catchphrases that pop up like,
I have friends everywhere.
And then Luthen tells him,
I have friends everywhere.
Yeah, that just becomes so powerful of a phrase because it shows it's both like a James Bond code phrase, like he would use in his old movies, but also it's indicating that the rebellion is spreading and that they can go to different places.
Infiltrated all these different places, different organizations, and it turns out to be true. They do have friends in a lot of places.
Yeah, and I love that at the end, the head of security that Dedra works for. We'll get to them in just a minute. We haven't talked about the bad guys as much yet, but he's listening to the audio and realizing that they've way underestimated the rebels. In his last minutes, the Pretergast or Pendergast, or as the Bald Moose guys call him, Pederast, which always cracks me up.
Pendergast. I want to go back to that audio he was listening to for 1 minute, because this is the kind of arc that you're talking about that ties the show together. In the first season, in the heist group, there's the young idealistic guy who's recording all his thoughts about rebellion and what it means. And at that point, Cassian is like, you're such an ideologue. I'm here for the cash. I don't care about any of this stuff.
Exactly.
But the things that he talked about and the themes keep coming back over and over and over. And then you're right. It ends with Pendergast listening to those words from that guy who was basically a nobody in the heist plot thing.
Yeah. And it's an inspiration. And I also love that the phrase rebellions are based on hope keeps popping up. And we find out it goes all the way back to the clerk at the hotel on Gore. Yes. He tells it to Cassian, who tells it to somebody, and they just keep the telephone chain, and it ends up all the way in Rogue One. So that was brilliant. So the last thing I want to say about Luthen and Clea, love Luthen. He had, just like Cassian, he probably had to die. He's the old order passing away to bring the new order. But Clea, people have said if there was anybody that could carry a new show, like Rebel spy mistress Clea would be kind of a cool show, because she's a little cynical now and hardened, but still really effective and smart and skilled. I would totally watch a Clea show.
I agree. She was excellent. She was really good in that role and interesting.
And I liked how that last episode that she was in, they gave her the space to do her thing for a while. And then Cassian and the droid and the other folks came in and helped her, but she had the opportunity to do her thing for a while before she needed help. It wasn't like she absolutely had to have Cassian come in from the very beginning to do things for her. She was completely James Bond all the way until she kind of got to the safe house or whatever.
That's right.
I want to look at the villains for a second. We haven't talked about them. I know we could talk about Mon Mothma, her husband, her sister. There's a whole crowd there. They were interesting.
I just the whole wedding thing and Mon Mothma's husband, I thought again, another interesting angle where it's like a person who isn't for the rebellion or doesn't care about the Empire or the rebellion, is just wants to enjoy his rich person life, going to parties and enjoying his wealth and things. Like, that's Mon Mothma's husband. And so, like, the fact that it's her having to do all this stuff, and she leaves the Senate, she's like, she didn't think for a second, I'm worried about my husband. She's like,
no, bye.
Yeah.
And then we see him. Did you catch that last little
end with somebody else?
he's with the wife of one of the other people that I think died, or she left or whatever. Yeah, the guy that got killed, maybe. I know that I did know the specific answer. It's eluding me now, but he was with another guy's wife that also had kind of gotten hung out to dry, and so they just got together. It made sense, So, and they weren't being driven by an assassin. So,
but also like he wasn't torn up about it either.
No, he just moved on to the next rich lady. And I want to mention Mon Mothma's sister. I think that was her, right? She was the famous cousin. She was the famous waif from Game of Thrones, if I recall.
Yeah.
And
Vel is her name in Andor.
Well, yeah. And she was interesting too, in that she was kind of the bridge, right? She could be in the down and dirty in the jungle fighting, and then she could show up on Chandrilar and throw money around and dress nice. Yeah, she could kind of interface with both worlds, which I thought was a really useful and interesting thing. So, all right, let's hit the villains here because we got to talk about them. Cyril and Dedra are like two of the greatest villains in anything history, much less Star Wars. I mean, because they're so layered. They're not just one note, one dimensional, black and white. There were times you had sympathy for both of them, and there are times you just couldn't stand both of them. And that's human beings.
Yes, but they weren't cartoon character flat villains. I love that. I also loved there are no redeemed villains in this show. You think for a minute they're going to bring Cyril around and make him part of the rebellion, and then somebody shoots him in the head. You're like, oh, thank you. We didn't do that. I love that there are no redeemed villains.
Cyril was right on the cusp of getting it. You're like, you're about to get it.
Exactly, because he believed that the Empire was right. I mean, he's a bureaucrat who's like, I'm doing my thing because this is for the greater good. And then he's like, what the heck?
He saw Cassian. He saw Andor. That was
he saw the massacre.
Well, yeah. Well, all right. I'm saying he saw the massacre and is on the cusp of changing sides, possibly. And then he sees Andor, and all that goes out the window, and he's back to, I got to get this guy.
Because this guy messed up my life.
My entire life. And Andor is like, who are you? That's the most beautiful thing, is that Cyril has spent years obsessing over finding this one criminal in his eyes. And when he, like Javert with, Les Miserables, and when he finally gets him, Andor hadn't got a clue. He doesn't know who this guy is. He doesn't know what he wants. He doesn't know what he's doing. And then he gets shot randomly by the Gore Resistance old man, right? That got him. So, oh my gosh. What a tragic arc and an ending for poor Cyril. I mean, and I love the fact that from the very beginning we were tipped off that Cyril was so overeager, because did you catch that he went to the tailor and had his uniform redesigned to look even more imperial than it would have?
I'm going to drop a little thing here. There are officers in the United States military who spend a lot of money on custom tailoring their uniforms so they look a certain way. Yeah. And that remark in that story hit home about who he was. But also, I love Cyril when he's at the Bureau of Standards and he's orienting that other guy, and he's like, if you work hard, one day you could be where I am, leading all these people in these little cubes doing data analysis about stuff, about fuel usage or whatever.
He's such an eager beaver. He's just like determined to be the greatest and the best, even in a crap job. So, yeah. And then Dedra is just absolutely brilliant. All right. So let's talk about her first, but I have a question at the end. So she is just the most hardcore. I'm going to be the next Grand Moff Tarkin. I'm going to show how great I am at being an Imperial officer villain person. And yet she's like Harry Bosch in a way. She's going to keep pushing the envelope, going outside, coloring outside the lines, because she's determined that what she thinks is important is more important than what her superiors are telling her.
Ding, ding. And let's be clear. The entire plot of Andor is ultimately the rebels find out about the Death Star because Dedra was so eager to go beyond the lines of the scope of her authority that she collected that information and put it basically in her Imperial OneDrive, and the other guy that was a spy accessed it, and that's how Luthen got it, because she was overeager. If she just stayed in her lane, the rebels never find out about the Death Star.
Death Star blows up Yavin, and that's it. It's unbelievable. That I love. I mean, one of the greatest moments in the entire series is when Krennic comes in and she's sitting there in the chair, and he says something like, "You know, you're a rebel. You're a rebel." And she's like, "No." He's like, what is it?" He
says, "What is the one word that could make me come down here to this room?" And she goes, "Death Star."
But he says something like, I know. He says, "If you're not a rebel, you missed your calling." That was so good,
because she did help them. Her actions ended up. She did all this stuff for the Empire and thought she was being, the most serious and taking the threat most seriously. But she went beyond the lines and she compromised security doing it, and she helped the rebels.
Yeah. Yeah. And then when she goes and confronts Luthen by herself, he has the chance to kill himself. Whereas if she'd gone in there with a security team and like stunned him or something, they'd have had him. Yeah. No, but she had to go in and look at me. I figured you out.
Yeah. And she didn't tell anybody she was doing that. They didn't know she was going there. And like, even think back to the first season, she's one of the people in charge when they have they're on Cassian's planet, and the droid projects the speech from his mother or whatever that starts the riot. Like, that's her mess.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So, and then everything on Gore, where she's kind of in charge, but there's the other guy that's in charge, and
she's kind of in charge, and then she realizes that she's not really in charge.
Not really. Yeah.
But then she's using her husband Cyril, and then he realizes all that stuff I did was like a front. Like, there wasn't. He thought he was doing the real work, and he was really just helping them set it up to kill everybody.
I did want to talk about the Gore thing. One more thing that we didn't cover was how they actually carried out the massacre. Was using this is incredible. They brought in raw Imperial soldiers that didn't have armor and didn't know what they were doing, and then ordered them out to cause a confrontation, knowing that it would result
after allowing the rebels to capture a bunch of guns, which they would bring to that event. They sent a bunch of green, untested troops into the heart of an angry mob.
Bullseyes on their chest. Yeah. Please shoot me.
Well, but also just please throw. Again, it starts with somebody throwing a rock at one of those guys.
Yeah, yeah. The Boston Massacre in a way.
My family made this point after we watched that episode. Just like the Boston Massacre, a little bit, not just a little bit, a lot of a setup. Like, it was done that way on purpose. We were trying to get that result, and we got it.
Yeah, absolutely incredible. That the Empire, it's funny that the Empire is in some ways very, very smart, and in some ways really stupid. It's just a big bureaucracy. It's just a big government bureaucracy where...
And again, as somebody who works in bureaucracy every day, I loved all those moments in the show when it was like, oh my gosh, like, these people, they got to have a Teams meeting about this thing right now and talk about it on the little Holo Teams thing. And then they got to get in the room together and talk about it. And then you got somebody in, it's unclear whose authority is what. And so that was great.
Yeah. So, I mean, I come away from it. I'm not sure whether I enjoyed the heroes' arcs better or the villains' arcs better, because they're all so good. It's they're equally good. And then again, some of them are just kind of gray. I mean, we think of Luthen as a hero, but to a lot of people, he was a villain, And I mean, and he did some very ruthless things. When the guy that brought him the information, he tricked me like he tricked that guy, because he mentioned Yavin. And I'm like, all right, if you tell that guy Yavin, then there's only two outcomes. He goes there or he dies immediately, right?
Well, but also, it wasn't just that guy. He had a wife and a child, and Luthen had promised him to take care of those people.
Yeah. And he did not.
So that's where when we talk about this being a dark show and the rebellion doing things that are not morally right, that is a great example. He kills that guy.
Yeah. Again, I mean, it's one of those, if I tell you I've got to kill you and you don't believe him, well, and I love how he just kept pressuring him. He's like, I'll tell you when I know my family's safe. And Luther's like, oh, you got to tell me now. You got to tell me now, you know. And he's like, well, look, he uses the magic word Yavin, and that convinces him to tell him. And then as soon as he tells him, his usefulness is done, and he's out. So, all right. So who have we not talked about? Anybody? I mean, director Krennic and
Pendergast. Especially in episode 1, I love Pendergast and kind of the ISB is the Imperial Internal Security people, and their kind of meetings with Deidre in there and Pendergast in there. I think those things are, because they're like, these rebels, you know, like that side of the coin of like how the Imperial organization perceives the rebellion, I thought is really good in the show.
Yeah, and exactly that they never take them seriously enough, and why would they ever think that they could be a threat to the Death Star, right? I mean, that's kind of the Rogue One thing, is that they actually could. So, all right, last couple of things. We do get to Yavin 4 by the end. We get the connection to Rogue One. We talked about that a little bit, but I don't know. Were you expecting it to go all the way that far? I guess because of the way that Rogue One starts. But I think it goes right up to that point.
Yeah, but I think it does make Rogue One make more sense, because the part with, especially watching it the first time, the part with Cassian at the beginning of Rogue One, you're like, who is this guy? What the heck is he doing? You know, you just don't. It doesn't make any sense. But now that you've seen the movie, now that you've seen Andor and then the movie, you're like, oh, I know exactly what he's doing. You know, and why he's doing it and who he is. So I think, but also I think the evolution of Yavin as a kind of a, you know, a place where people were gathering and they didn't really have control over stuff. And again, like Cassian just comes and goes, and they're like, well, you're not supposed to be doing that. You know, like it shows the rebellion kind of being like duct taped together. So
it really is. Yeah. And it evolves. It gets more and more official and more comprehensive over the course of the story, but it's still very loose.
And then you end up with kind of the, you know, the Rogue One space. You have like Mon Mothma and the other senators discussing what they're going to do or not do, whatever, right?
And they can't agree on anything. They have no unanimity. They're even squabbling, and so that enables Cassian to kind of go off and do things that he needs to do. So, all right. So, last thoughts then. Anything we haven't talked about, we haven't covered. Where does this sit in Star Wars history, and how will it be remembered?
I think it'll be remembered very fondly. I mean, I think it's, to me, I think it's the best thing that's been done outside of the original trilogy.
Yeah. I
think it's better than the prequels. It's 1,000,000% better than any of the later movies. So I think it's better than the other TV shows. And again, I'm somebody, I know you haven't watched those things, but I watched all of Clone Wars. I watched all of Bad Batch. I watched all of the other animated shows and the other Star Wars shows. And there's some ties into these things that I appreciate too, but it's also, this is the best of all of that stuff.
The first movie is my favorite. I love Mandalorian.
Yes. You're right. The Mandalorian is definitely the second best TV show. It was the best TV show, but this is better.
I know, that's the thing, is I love Mandalorian. I didn't think anything could top it. I had such hope for Boba Fett. I didn't dislike Boba Fett the way a lot of people did. I just enjoyed getting to see Boba Fett and Ming-Na run around on Tatooine and do stuff, and I was happy with that. It was more of a kid's show, but I have to admit, if they did a Boba Fett show in the style of Andor, with Boba Fett more Clint Eastwood and less kids show Boba Fett, I would be all over that. I would love that.
Yeah.
Okay. But I've enjoyed The Mandalorian, and then I thought that was as good as Star Wars could be after 1977.
Great.
And then this show comes along, and I realize all it took was taking things a little more seriously and thinking character arcs through carefully and putting some real thought and planning and structure and all that into it. And I mean, it's maybe a little more real. It's weird to say realistic about Star Wars, but it's a little more humanly realistic, a little more character, a little less cartoony. And in that way, it won me over. It absolutely did, which I wouldn't have said during the first season.
Agree. But I think like in the first season, the moment that I was like, oh my gosh, I love this show so much was the prison break scene. Like I
Yes.
just thought that was so great. And I loved the characters and what they did and how they did it. But also then the moment when Andy Serkis can't go with them, like that shows the level of like in a more kid-oriented, family-oriented show, everybody escapes and gets away or whatever. But in this show, they're like, nope, that guy, you like him now, and he's not going to make it.
Yeah,
You know?
only a handful of them, I think, actually got all the way to the shore and then had a way to get out of there.
Yes.
Which
So
too.
Agree. And so I think that we've talked about this a lot, the darkness of the show, the seriousness of the show, but also the show takes the ideas of both like imperial oppression and rebellion seriously. And they're like, okay, what do those things mean? How do people think about those things and then actually execute those things? And I think like you see in Deidre and Pendergrass, and Cyril, the imperial oppression piece, and then you see in like Luthen like what it takes to make a rebellion and how do we get people to, you know, to get up off the couch and do something about this oppression instead of being kind of lulled to sleep while the empire consolidates power. So I think that is what I love most about the show and what I think it does most effectively.
100% agree. I would just add, I think you're absolutely right. I think that was very well said. I would just add, I think that if you watch the Star Wars movies, you would think nothing like that could ever happen in our world. You watch Andor and you go, dear Lord, that could happen in our world. And that's a big difference. It's not a cartoon. And there's nothing wrong with cartoons.
No.
The first Star Wars trilogy is wonderful, but it was a long time ago, galaxy far, far away. You know, it's guys in white plastic armor are not going to take over the United States. Bureaucrats having meetings, taking over the United States, absolutely. All of that is very, very realistic and terrifying. So it's not just a great entertainment, but also a very nice warning shot about actual fascism and dictatorship and bureaucratic overreach and all those things that we worry about. So,
all right.
All right.
I just want to take 1 second there and add on to what you said. I agree 100%. We're both, you know, people who study a lot of history and read a lot of history or whatever. I also thought like the way, and you referenced some of this earlier, but the way they, you know, did both the rebellion and the imperial stuff and kind of based it on things that have happened in human history was useful. Like it was smart.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. I think we have put down the last word for at least for our network on Andor. And I appreciate John coming on today. And we'll go out of here, and the White Rocket Network will return with our next show down the road. Thank you very much, John.
Thanks, man, for having me.
All right. And